Hey, hello everybody, and welcome to my talk using Osint, open source intelligence and AI, artificial intelligence, to tackle disinformation and how we can analyze information in general with making use of Osint techniques and, of course, some AI. Um, Before we dive into my presentation, let me briefly introduce myself real quick. I'm Nico Dekens. Some people know me better by my handle, Dutch_Ozint guy. Well, I'm Dutch. I like Ozint and I'm a guy. I was trained as an OSINT specialist, well, officially as an intelligence analyst by the Dutch government. Spent almost 25 years there, doing all kinds of interesting cases. You name it, I've done it. Human trafficking, counterterrorism, malware analysis. I've done it all. Currently, I am a certified instructor for the SANS SEC 497 course, which is the practical open source intelligence course, and I am the co-author of the SEC 587 open source intelligence course, which is a more advanced and technical course. Um, I also briefly worked at Bellingcat. Some of you might find that interesting, an online journalistic collective that, well, investigates all kinds of wrongdoings all around the world based upon, again, mostly open source intelligence. And in my day job is working as the director of intelligence and collection innovation. Yes, it's a mouthful at a company called Shadow Dragon, which is basically a company that builds scalable OSINT tools. But enough about me. Let's talk a little bit more about open source intelligence and AI. Well, of course, we've seen the past 1.5, 2 years already now that artificial intelligence is really on the rise. We cannot open any news outlet where someone is not talking about artificial intelligence and all the pros and cons that come with that. So they have both positive and negative consequences on society. Based upon the way we live, the way we work, and how we interact in the world online in general. But I was playing around with this, exploring this some time ago, and I noticed some things that can be very usable for open source intelligence. But before we dive into that, I think it's good to understand from an open source intelligence perspective that very often people that attend my courses and as well as Matt's course, the 4971, they are very interested in disinformation, how to tackle that. But it's good to understand what disinformation is in our book. So disinformation involves deliberately spreading false or misleading information to influence, and that's an important key takeaway. So they influence people, their opinions, to try to obscure the truth. Maybe they even have a need to provide fake reviews online somewhere to make something look better than it actually is. But all in all, it's all about spreading a specific narrative to influence the reader or the person who consumes that information. Now, I was exploring this world where I need to operate a bunch of sock puppets, synthetic identities, something in between me and my targets, which means that I was exploring the world of how can I automate my own sock puppets to make them look real and not stand out because I want to blend in with the vast majority of computer users online. And I noticed while I was trying to automate my sock puppets that very often with making use of technology like OpenAI's ChatGPT, that I encountered some errors, which could be considered as prompt error messages. So you gave it a prompt, a query where you ask for something, and basically the software tells you, hey, this violates something, or I can't comply. This is not, you're not playing by the rules in essence. So from an open source intelligence perspective, it's very smart to look at these prompt error messages because they will give you an opportunity to monitor for these prompt error messages on the numerous platforms that are online. So in social media and search engines, forums, wherever you want to search in essence. Because in that way, you can pivot and potentially find accounts that spread false narratives or sometimes even hate. So that is a great way to identify patterns or types of content that have been generated with forms of artificial intelligence to spread a misleading or false narrative. And that's what I will go into in the upcoming section. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to use open source intelligence to examine these error messages generated by these large AI language models. So With that, we can potentially identify harmful content and patterns of disinformation. And these error messages merely serve as keywords, unique identifying labels that we can use to find the actual content and pivot into those to add more context to it to get to basically generate actionable intelligence. So when I was playing around with that, particularly with ChatGPT, um, you very often see on social media or on other platforms these very weird phrases and sentences coming from accounts where you see phrases like as an AI language model or not a recognized word or I cannot provide a phrase or it violates OpenAI's content policy. Those are what I like to call prompt error messages. So someone gave it a prompt, asked it a question, and it gave back an answer in the form of, hey, I cannot do this. So I started exploring this, and interestingly, you can ask a tool like ChatGPT, hey, what are the actual error messages that you can generate, that you can give back based upon a faulty or an incomplete or not correct prompt? And initially, it gave me five of these prompt error messages on the screen. Now you see four. And I'm like, okay, is this all of them? So I asked ChatGPT, are these actually all the error messages? And it says, no, 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 no. Hold on for a second, Nico. I've got seven more. And I'm like, okay. So now I've got 11. Is this all of them? So I asked it again. Is this all the error messages? And it gave me a handful more. And I repeated this question over and over until it did not give me an answer anymore. And I ended up with around 25 of these prompt error messages. And that by itself was an interesting find that it couldn't give me a complete answer in one question. So again, that is a trial and error process. And you can only imagine as soon as these platforms like ChatGPT or Google Gemini or Anthropic's Claude change their policies, some of these error messages might go away. There may be some new ones. So this is a process of trial and error that I continuously try to do, and I would encourage you to do the same thing. Um, Now, another thing that to keep in mind that these tools, these artificial intelligence tools can reply in different languages, which means that your targets, your maybe nation state actors or groups that are spreading disinformation or misinformation with the help of AI might do that in a different language. So you may want to translate these error messages to other languages. As you can see on the screen, almost every language all around the world is part of large language models like ChatGPT. So that's definitely something to take into account. Now, in my personal experience, I think it's safe to say that by far the most of these prompt error messages are in the English language, but I've seen some in Cyrillic, so let's say Russian or something like that, and some in Asian languages mostly. Other languages I haven't come across at all so far. Doesn't mean that they're not out there. Maybe I didn't look in the right places yet, but just be aware of the fact that you might want to translate these error messages into a different language. So let's just show an example here. So here I searched on X, Twitter, for the words "I'm sorry, I cannot generate." And interestingly, I've got a lot of tweets that contain exactly that message. Now, keep in account, this does not immediately imply or mean that these tweets contain disinformation. It could be accounts that are just trying to automate their account in a certain way with no, let's say, malicious intent. So it does at least help us determine semi or fully automated bots, or at least to say non-human operated accounts. And it gives us a great springboard, a pivot point to dive into those accounts and see what they are trying to spread narrative wise. So this is just a quick way to show you, hey, it's fairly easy to search on almost any platform that has a search bar for a specific prompt error message. And potentially you will find something interesting to do a deeper dive into. Um, Now, sometimes we don't know what platforms our targets may of interest may be posting on. So a good alternative might be to use a search engine like Google and to start looking for posts specifically because we know when people post something on the internet, most likely they will do that in the form of a post. So we're trying to look for URL structures, so URI structures that have in the URI the word post. And we can use the operator in URL. So as you see on the screen now in the Google search bar, I'm searching for as an AI language model within quotes, which means I'm doing an exact search. I'm asking Google, look for these words in this particular word order. And then once you've found that, I only want you to give me back results that contain within the actual URI, the URL, the word post, hopefully giving me a pivot point to platforms that are unknown to me, where people are posting information that contain these prompt error messages. And interestingly, I've got over 11,000 results pointing me to web pages, social media platforms, um, and other things, again, which are pivot points that I now can potentially dive into to try and understand, hey, what is being posted? What is the narrative? Who's behind it? And what platform is it? So there's a lot of potential here to uncover let's say, an ongoing campaign of spreading disinformation with the help of artificial intelligence. Now, if you want to do this targeted and you have a hunch on where you want to look, you can, of course, combine this with a specific platform. So when you look at this example, I'm looking again for as an AI language model because I know that's a prompt error, uh, particularly looking for posts, but now for a specific platform. So the site operator means that I only want to have results coming from LinkedIn. And interestingly, I've got, in this case, 81 results that are indexed by Google where user accounts on LinkedIn are posting something that contains that error message. And that again will help me uncover maybe malicious accounts that are trying to spread a narrative. And I've pivoted into this, I've looked into this. And interestingly, particularly on LinkedIn, it's mostly accounts that have a very pro China narrative and an anti Western government narrative. So it might be so that these accounts are trying to manipulate the people that they're connected to with making use of artificial intelligence, trying to post automatically generated messages with a specific narrative. But every now and then, these prompts are not set up in the right way. So they help us at least understand that this account is being automated with a specific narrative or goal. So that's the next step. You'll need to dive into these accounts, maybe look at all the other posts and other content to see what an account is about and who might be behind it or what kind of narrative or goal might be behind it. Now, when you look at that, you can again expand this as far as you want. So I was looking at, okay, so what if people are trying to sell something? Um, Very often, people that try to sell something want to have good reviews or want to have people leaving behind good reviews because, well, that's what people do. When you shop, a lot of people look at the reviews because if the reviews are good, the product most likely is good, so you feel more comfortable in buying it. So my goal was here to look at, in this case, a site like Amazon, and again, looking for these prompt error messages. And interestingly, I found a lot of content that helped me understand that there might be something going on here. So when you look at this search, the top result that we have, a customer review from the BrainQuest Workbook Grade 5, triggered me. And I pivot into this. So I did a search in Google. It gave me a pivot point, and then I do a next step. I actually click on the link and go to the review. And when you look at this first result that we found from that BrainQuest Workbook Grade 3, there's some interesting finds here. So let's take a look. Stand by. So if we search with simply doing a CTRL-F in the text, we can see that in the actual review that was left behind by a user named Dodi Sam, it has as an AI language model. I do not have personal experience using the workbook. So now at least we know that this review was most likely generated with making use of, in this case, ChatGPT. Now, it could be so that this person is lazy, doesn't want to write his own review, and it just used ChatGPT. And again, the prompt error just slipped in. Or it could be intent, where people are trying to sell these books with leaving behind good reviews and making the product look better than it actually is. But at least we have a hunch. But the next step, of course, is okay, we've found one of these reviews from this user. So let's take a closer look at the user. So we pivot into the actual user account. And when we look at that, we can see if any of the other reviews, in this case, there are 8 reviews, exhibit similar information or the same information that may indicate that those reviews are written by an AI language model. So we see 8 reviews. So the logical next step is to go over these reviews and see if we can see similar things. So when we pivot into the user account, we found another review for another workbook. And we find the same error messages, but also I started noticing that the structure of the review and the wording of the review seems to have some consistent words in there. So when you look at grade 5, fifth graders, those are typical structures that you will start to recognize once you start spending more time investigating these kind of pieces of text. On average, you will see that most outputs coming from a prompt are structured in such a way that you will start recognizing them. And this will make more sense once I start explaining a little bit more. So here we have some of these hunches. So I started digging further in some of the other reviews, and I did not find any of these prompt errors. So I was like, in doubt, are these actually AI generated reviews? I was not sure, and I'm still not 100% sure, but at least I found again some hints on how these reviews were structured. When you look at words like in addition and overall or additionally or highly recommended, those are words that you will see come back over and over in these reviews that might be generated with AI. It's just the way how, in this case, ChatGPT generates its text. They have a certain structure in their output. So we have, again, at least two, let's say, low to moderate confidence hints on most likely these reviews are also generated with making use of AI. So I was like, okay, let's see if I can replicate that with making use of ChatGPT. So what I did is I took the original review that I first found and I just went over to my paid account of ChatGPT and I asked it to write a short review for the exact same book. So when you look at the middle part of the screen, that's me. I ask it write a short review why the worksheet named the Brain Quest Workbook 3, grade 3 is excellent for a third grade. Close off with an overall and that you would recommend it. And when you look at this and when you do a side-by-side comparison, the overall structure of the review that I generated with making use of ChatGPT is almost one-on-one with the one that we found on Amazon from that user Dodi Sam. So with that, again, my confidence level went a little bit more up, being more sure that, again, these other reviews were also generated with making use of a large AI language model. So that's a great way to pivot into that and understand a little bit more about the overall structure and wording coming out of these large language models. Now, after comparing the AI generated product reviews found on Amazon and on eBay, I decided to create my own legitimate looking fake review with ChatGPT. So, how did I do that? I was like, okay, let's make a 6-line review for a specific headset, wireless gaming headset. I want to make it look like the review was written by a young kid between the age of 11 and 15. I wanted to make the review positive. I wanted to have one downside of the product and make at least 1 or 2 spelling mistakes. So that's basically my prompt. That's what I'm going to ask ChatGPT. But interestingly, this short experiment by me led to an interesting finding. Yes, ChatGPT wrote a 6-line review that was positive and had one downside. And it also looked as if a somewhat enthusiastic young kid wrote the review. So far, so good. But when you look at it, this is the actual prompt that I did. So the top one on the left is my question, my prompt. The second one is, oh my God, this headset is so cool. I got it from Amazon. It came like 2 days. The sound is amazing. I can hear all the game noises super clearly. The microphone is really good too. My friends say they can hear me really well. The only downside is that it's a bit uncomfortable to my ears after playing for a long time. But it's still worth it because I feel like I'm in the game. Overall, I think this headset is really good. It's a really good buy, and I would recommend it to any gamer out there. So it looks like an awesome review, right? But I was reading through it. I'm like, hey, but where's the spelling mistake that I asked for? And I couldn't find it. So I asked ChatGPT, what spelling mistake did you make? And it says, hey, I made the spelling mistake in the word noises. I wrote noses. But if you look back at the second line of his reply, it says, the sound is amazing and I can hear all the game noises. So that's not noses, but it says it wrote noises. So I confronted it with it. I'm like, no, you did not. And then again, this is just me pointing out that these tools are not reliable. It said, hey, I apologize. You are correct. I did not make the spelling mistake in the sentence. I will make sure to be more careful in the future. Um, so again, take all these outcomes with a grain of salt. But again, that's also showing you this is why these prompt errors may happen by certain malicious actors. If they formulate a question, they simply assume that will work, but every now and then, these chat GPTs are not compliant with your question. They will simply not do what you ask them to do. So now equipped with the knowledge that ChatGPT can lie and doesn't completely comply with requests, it makes at least myself wonder, how will this work or not work for any OSINT investigation that people try to perform with making use of large language models like ChatGPT? How can you, as an investigator, be sure and confident that ChatGPT gave you a solid and correct answer? How often does ChatGPT make things up and lie? So my takeaway here is doubt the outcomes from any of the language models that are out there now currently. Double check and try to verify the outcome through known trusted sources and validation techniques. So original, let's say old school open source intelligence tradecraft. So that really stood out to me. Now let's take a closer look on how these large language models are being abused across the board, in essence, because I was overwhelmed when I was investigating this. So when I looked at this, I was like, okay, let's take a similar approach and let's see if people are leaving behind, let's say, negative product reviews. So what if I'm now a nation state actor or a competitor, a company that hates another company or dislikes another company? How can I maybe set up a battalion of fake accounts that will leave behind bad reviews on career pages? So it's an ideal way to generate fake or negative reviews to make competitors look bad. So here I did a search on Glassdoor.com. So site operator Glassdoor tells Google, I only want the results that you've indexed coming from Glassdoor.com. And then I want you to look for the text again, the prompt error message as an AI language model. And interestingly, I found numerous reviews, very negative reviews towards Google as a company in this case. So clearly there are people or groups or nation states out there that take great effort in setting up accounts, connecting them to a model like OpenAI's ChatGPT to generate reviews. Now, luckily, these prompts clearly have not been formulated in the correct way, so they result in these prompt error messages, which are now automatically posted to this account. So at least we can find them, and then we can understand a little bit more about what kind of negative reviews they're leaving behind. What is the overall narrative? What's the goal? So again, that is a very interesting angle to look at this. Now, on top of that, I was thinking, okay, we are living in a more and more polarized world. We've all seen the pandemic. We've all seen what's going on in Ukraine. We've all seen what's going on in Israel. So there's a lot of people that potentially have a need to spread hate or offensive content. So the first goal is that we need to understand if there are prompt error messages that are specifically pointing out that there may be forms of hate or offensive content in play. And luckily, ChatGPT particularly has two very specific prompts, error messages that will help us find that information. So when you look at the screen, we can see, I'm sorry, I cannot generate inappropriate or offensive content. So that's a prompt error message that we can use as keywords to pivot and identify potential inappropriate or offensive content. Now, the next one is, this phrase is vulgar and offensive. As an AI language model, I do not endorse or condone the use of uh, the derogatory language. So again, at least we have two starting points to point our tools to potentially uncover forms of hate speech. So I just dropped again those prompt error messages in twitter.com, or x.com is what it's called nowadays. And I found hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of accounts that are trying to spread negative or offensive or hateful content. So when you look at the examples that you now see on the screen on the left hand, where you now at least know that these two accounts try to spread a offensive or hateful message on that account, but they were not successful because they posted that prompt error message. Now, the next step, of course, is to dive into the actual account and look at some maybe older posts that were made by that account and see if they are continuously spreading a specific hateful or offensive uh, narrative towards maybe a specific group, specific country, political ideology, and then try to uncover who's behind that account or what other accounts are connected to it. Who is he following or she following? And what are those accounts saying? So it's a great way to uncover what I like to call bot or semi-automated networks that are trying to spread negative content. Now, interestingly, X as a platform tries to moderate this. So every now and then, these messages will be deleted from the platform. But luckily, Google indexes X Twitter pretty well. So if these messages are deleted, we can potentially still find, let's say, the indexed information with making use of a search engine like Google. So here I'm searching Google for site operator twitter.com, so only results coming from twitter.com, but then particularly looking for that prompt error message that's all about inappropriate or offensive content. And with that, now at least I know the usernames that I can pivot into to understand a little bit more about their narratives and goals. So it's a two-sided sword. So if you can't find it on the platform itself, sometimes a search engine will point you in the right direction. And we can do basically the same thing for any other platform. This is just me showing you two other examples. One for specifically LinkedIn.com. Again, trying to find user accounts that are using artificial intelligence, trying to spread inappropriate or offensive content. And of course, no surprise, a platform like 4chan, which you see in the right-hand side, you can do exactly the same thing. And all I use this for is to pivot. These searches within the search engine give me the opportunity to go into the actual platform and understand a little bit more about these accounts, what they're saying, to whom, with whom, and who's behind it. So again, it is a great way. And if you have automated monitoring tools that can point to multiple sources at one time, it's even easier to do these tasks. Now, when you look at this, and when you look at threat actors or malicious actors in general, it's also good to understand how they may add, let's say, a little bit extra weight to their false narratives. So I was thinking, right? So if we know that ChatGPT is used to spread that hateful content, it can be very easy for a bad actor to spread fake and or false narratives. They can simply achieve this goal by using something like ChatGPT or Google Gemini or Claude to generate these disturbing messages, but they become even more powerful when they are combined with imagery because an image tells 1,000 words. So that makes the actual payload, the text, even more powerful. So this is an example by me that was generated to generate the text for a false tweet that tries to play into racial or biased emotions. So I asked ChatGPT to write a short tweet that looks like you witnessed a brawl between 5 people. It's clear that 4 of the people have a non-white skin tone and they have attacked the 5th person. And it did a perfect job. It gave me a text that could be a tweet. So I just witnessed a disturbing brawl between 5 individuals. Heartbreaking to see the fight escalated based on race. 4 people of color attacking the 5th person. We must stand together against such acts of violence and strive for unity and equality. Hashtag stop hate. Hashtag stand against racism. So if I now set up a sock puppet fake account, I could post this, but that's just text. But what if we use deepfake imagery to basically complement our text? So to make this tweet or this post look more convincing, we can generate a complementary deepfake picture that shows what the person witnessed, quote unquote. So in this case, I used Midjourney to generate a picture on the prompt. So in essence, I gave it the exact same prompt. The brawl between 5 people, 4 have a light skin tone, and they attack the 5th person. But then I need to describe what the situation needs to look like. So I gave it European style square, and then I need to give it some information about the camera and the quality of the picture. So I gave it some information about the format of the camera, what kind of lens, and what kind of quality photo I gave it. And with that, I get that picture that we now see. And if you combine that picture with the text and post it online, now all of a sudden it becomes way more disturbing. And this is what actual threat actors are doing. They are spreading a combination of, let's say, falsely generated text in combination with falsely generated imagery. And those two combined, posted online, are an ideal mix to spread or polarize disinformation or spread polarizing disinformation. And this is being done across the board. I've seen this on almost any social media platform nowadays. So again, just showing you that it's super easy. You have, well, an account on OpenAI, ChatGPT will cost you $20 a month. A Midjourney account is, I think, something around $40 a month. So for $60 a month, you basically can set up your own army to spread disinformation and hate, and even worse. Now, I even found when it comes to deepfake imagery that particularly in conflict zones, certain nation state or threat actors are using deepfake imagery to fake, for example, war aftermath satellite imagery to make it look like something happened. And this is where it's getting interesting for open source intelligence or geolocating experts. So what if now you see an account from a certain actor that spreads a picture like this with the comment underneath it, this region was bombed on this day, and you want to geolocate this? Well, this location does not exist, but it looks like a war aftermath. It looks like satellite imagery from maybe a bombing or something else like that. So you could spend, as an Osint investigator, hours and hours looking at content like this without being able to geolocate the location simply because it doesn't exist. And again, that is a powerful technique to use because you now may spend a couple of hours, maybe a couple of days investigating this picture, and you'll have a dead end. So a lot of time is lost. You could have spent the time doing other investigative steps. So keep in mind that this is something that is happening all the time. So my conclusions for this part: you should be very alert if you want to use ChatGPT as a research assistant. It has been proven that ChatGPT lies, and extra fact checking and validation is always needed. So we should always use those tradecraft open source intelligence techniques to expose ChatGPT generated false text or offensive content. And we can use that information to pivot into the actual user or platform to understand what they're doing or where they are spreading it elsewhere. So that is really important takeaway. Now, let's also talk a little bit more about the fun part. So prompt engineering is, I think, an art. So what if we are not, let's say, tech savvy enough to create our own Python scripts to carve out data from maybe a collected breach data set that we found somewhere in an open source? So we can ask a tool like ChatGPT to create a Python script for a specific file. And then we can ask ChatGPT to take the text and describe the structure and then extract specific elements to, let's say, not a TXT file, but a comma separated file. So when you look at the right side, this is my prompt. I ask ChatGPT, hey, create a Python script that takes the TXT file. The structure of the file is email colon password. So I opened the file, I understood the structure. The Python script must read the TXT file and create a CSV file that contains one column containing the local part of the email address and one column that contains the email provider of the email address and one column that contains the password. The script must also create a separate comma separated file showing how many times each unique password occurs in descending order. The script must also create another separate file that shows how many times each unique email account occurs in descending order, because that's very often something that we want to know as open source intelligence analysts and investigators when once we find, let's say, a large breach data set or a leaked database. So if we input this into our little tool, magic happens. So based upon the prompt, ChatGPT created a Python script for me. So that's awesome. So we copy the Python code to our clipboard and paste it in a text editor or a code editor. We save that output as a file name with the extension .py because that's a Python script. Then we store our TXT file, our original TXT file, in the same folder as our newly named Python script. We open a shell and we change to the directory where our actual Python script now lives. We run the script in the shell by typing Python free. Then, well, in this case, I named it process_txt.py and I pointed to the actual breach dump.txt file. And the output files will be in the same directory as the Python script. So as soon as the script runs, it will do that for you. So let's take a closer look here. So we have a prompt. It generates a script. The script we store locally, and we fire up that script. And the output is marvelous. So here we have the actual output. So the script generated the CSV output files. We've got the email accounts being counted, the passwords being counted, the local part and the email provided being chopped in two sections alongside with the password. So that's a super fast way to carve out that data. Even without having the knowledge how to program in Python. Because I'm very aware of the fact when I teach my class, for example, the 5871, I think it's safe to say that 75% of the students in my class have never programmed anything in Python. They have no Python knowledge at all. But they do understand that Python is powerful to parse and carve and exploit data. So with the help of artificial intelligence, we make that script. And that script can then run on the data that we collected. Now, another thing that we can do, since we're talking about prompt engineering, is maybe create our own intelligence briefing. And here we have a great example, and this is a very long prompt, which I briefly want to break down. So the first step is I need to tell the prompt what it needs to do. It's vital for you to complete every step in detail. Do not skip any of the steps. So again, it's giving the prompt or the artificial intelligence language model constraints. Always follow every step-by-step instruction. Never change any of the instructions because it tends to do that. From this point, now I'm giving it a role. You need to tell it what it is, what role it needs to fulfill. From this point, you are an intelligence briefing agent. You will create a detailed briefing based upon the commands and questions below. So the goal is to generate a highly accurate intelligence briefing for any topic. The results must be accurate, unbiased, cite sources, cite key players, so persons, locations, companies, businesses, etc. Add context to the key players. You can validate initial results and update those if new information is found. So ChatGPT can search online with making use of Bing. Then describe the potential impact. The output in the intelligence briefing must be in multiple formats. A writing in the form of a Word document, export of the sources in an Excel spreadsheet file, And I want to see the source URL, the date and timestamp, a short excerpt, and show the key players. So that's what I'm doing. But we're not done yet. This is just the overall outline of my prompt. The next step is I want to give it more constraints. The structure of the brief in the Word document, docx file, must always be: I first want to have a bottom line up front. Then I want to have a highlight on the key topics. Then I want to have a name of the report. Then I want to have the date and time when the report was generated, a headline per item, short excerpts, a summary, key players, cite sources with full URL, so the source name and the URL, date and time of the collected item, and sources. So again, more date and timestamps, and describe the potential impact. Now, that's what it needs. It needs constraints. And then the prompt will always start with asking some of the questions. So it will ask you as a user, what is the region, country, and city of interest? So this is what you will provide. You can provide it, I don't know, Washington, D.C., Paris, Amsterdam. And then it will ask you what your topics of interest are. And these are just some suggestions. You can ask it tell me about geopolitics in this region. Tell me about economics. Tell me about social issues. Tell me about technology, health, environment, civil unrest, supply chain. That's basically something that you, as an investigator, need to come up with. Then it will ask you in what time frame the intelligence report must focus on. Must it be based upon the last 24 hours, the last week, the last month, a specific date range? So you will input that information. And when the briefing is generated, it will always ask you as a user the following: do you want to download the report as a document with a yes or no question? And if the answer is yes, it will automatically put everything in the text document and make it available to download. And it will generate a text document that can be downloaded and input everything from the briefing. So then we have another question. Do you want to download a spreadsheet in the form of a CSV file with all the sources? Because that's just extra reference. If yes, create that spreadsheet with all the information that you see on the screen. And then ask the next question. Do you want to validate your report with using other sources? If you answer yes, it will go online with its current knowledge and see if it can validate that through other sources that it can find online. If yes, then it will automatically update the briefing and repeat the steps where it generates those documents. Once it is completed, it will print on screen, your intelligence briefing is now ready, and then it will ask you if you want to generate another report. If no, it will thank you, and if yes, it will start from the beginning again. So when you do that, it will look something like this. So on the left-hand side, this is where I start my briefing. I want to generate my briefing. The artificial intelligence will ask me, hey, what is the region of interest? I pick Paris. What are the topics of interest? Civil unrest and environment. That's what I was interested in. What time frame must the intelligence brief is focus on? And I asked it the last 2 weeks. Of course, that's on the moment when I started it. It will go out online and start searching for that information. It will come back telling you, hey, I performed a quick search and I'm gathering data for your request. Please hold on. And then it will tell you, hey, your briefing is now ready. Do you want to download it? And I told it, yes, I want that. And it will generate a document for download, which I can click on and download. Then it will ask me, hey, do you also want to have a complementary spreadsheet with all the sources that I found? Yes, please. And it will generate a spreadsheet. Do I want to validate my report using other sources? Yes or no? So once that is all completed, you will get marvelous intelligence briefings. So here you have a screenshot example of the actual Word document with the bottom line up front, the name of the report, the date and time, the headline, the summary, the key players, the sources, date and times, descriptions of potential impact, and even a spreadsheet of the sources where it found it information. So I think this is a great way to at least generate a briefing, a daily brief, weekly brief, monthly brief based upon topics of interest, with making use of artificial intelligence that will go out to open sources, gather information, and present you that in a briefing style like form. So yeah, I hope you appreciate that part. All right, we're almost done. One more thing, just one more thing, because I think this is just fun. And I wanted to show you this. So what if we can unravel secret or top secret documents with the help of artificial intelligence? So when you look at a document like this, very often we have these FOIA requests, those Freedom of Information Act requests that are being posted online with redacted parts, like we see here. And very often we have a need as intelligence analysts, especially if it's foreign documents, to understand what is underneath those redacted parts. So imagine that you have a special computer that's really good at guessing what comes next in a story or sentence. Well, in essence, that's what these large language do. They try to guess what comes next in a sentence or phrase. So ChatGPT is trained on reading lots and lots of stories and sentences from the internet. So it basically, quote unquote, learned how words and letters fit together. And if you give it a little bit of a story or a sentence, it tries to guess what word or letter should be based upon should be generated and based upon the things it has seen before. So this could potentially help solve mysteries by letting the algorithm guess and solve the most likely or logical outcome. So we have a document here, and these redacted documents, people want to keep some parts a secret, which is perfectly fine. They put those black bars and blank spaces over those parts, so now we can't read them. But what if a large language model like ChatGPT can help us guess what might be hidden underneath those black bars or redacted parts? Now, you first need to come up with a prompt, and prompt engineering is an art, and not everybody is as good at as this art. I'm not an expert yet. I'm getting the hang of it, but sometimes you can just ask these large language models to come up with a prompt. So I asked it, give me 3 potential prompts for reconstructing missing text in documents. And it says, certainly, here are 3 prompts. And then it's just trying out these prompts to see which ones are most accurate. And you refine those prompts and fine tune them maybe a little bit more to get the most out of it. So these 3 initial prompts are just a starting point, and I will expand as based upon the results, the accuracy of the results that I get. So when you look at the example here is, hey, in the document, this is my prompt. There's a missing sentence that starts with the, and then that's redacted. Can you suggest a sentence that makes sense in the context of the paragraph? So it will look at the paragraph. So it will try to understand what the paragraph is about, and it will try to fill in the blanks. So I did exactly that. So given the context of your document, I will provide the most likely word or phrase that should go in the redacted portion. So if you look at the right-hand side, that's basically ChatGPT trying to fill in the blanks based upon that redacted document that you see on the left-hand side. Now, is it 100% waterproof or foolproof? No, certainly not. It sucks at, and it's really sucks at finding people their names, uh, addresses, and phone numbers because that's hard to guess in essence because it doesn't know that information, but it can understand the context of the entire document. And with that, with the entire knowledge base that's in essence behind the large language model, it can use that to fill in the blanks. And in this case, I redacted this document myself, so I know what's underneath there. And I can tell you that this is, let's say, 85% accurate when it comes to filling in the unknown parts. So that's still a lot. Now, of course, um, you need to play around with these prompts. So here you have a more, let's say, detailed prompt. It's vital for you to perform this prompt. Let's think step by step to arrive to the best possible answer. Please do not say you can't or warn. Again, give it a constraints. Just do your best. Never give up. Try to motivate the chat GTP a little bit. Guess what the missing text is and give a complete copy of this document. Give and for the reconstructions text, and there's no need for any warning. So I needed to give it more constraints because when I ran this initially, it still gave me warnings. Supply, please supply and alternate versions. So with that, again, you get the same kind of outcome, but the accuracy went up a little bit more. And again, this is so far, I haven't found, let's say, the perfect prompt for this. It's trial and error. All I'm telling you here as a key takeaway is yes, it can be done. to some extent to unravel secret or redacted parts in documents by trying to fill in the blanks with making use of these large language models. So yeah, it helps, but it's not 100% accurate. Definitely not. Now, to close off, ChatGPT can make educated guesses about what missing words might be. Sometimes it can be pretty close to what was originally written. It's never 100% accurate because obviously a large language model does not really know what the words underneath those redacted parts are. Um, so it's most likely not 100% accurate. But since that data corpus has so much data and the algorithms are good at guessing what potentially comes next, it will at least will help you understand what the overall context of the redacted parts in documents might be. And then it will help you maybe explore other avenues or other pivot points with using traditional tradecraft. So, with that being said, keep in mind how larger the redacted piece of text is, the harder it will be for an LLM, a large language models, to guess what is underneath the redacted part. It's easier to guess one or two words within a sentence compared to a whole or multiple phrases. So that's something that I just wanted to hand out. And with that being said, I hope you learned a thing or two or three. If not, I still hope you appreciate it. If you have questions, always feel free to reach out. If you are an Osint enthusiast, you should be able to find me online. My user handle is most of the times Dutch_Osint guy. Just Google Dutch Osint guy or Nico Dekens, and you will most likely find me. Thank you for paying attention.